All right, guys, I'm sure everyone knows, so I'm going to keep this very short. I just want to thank Michael for coming on. If y'all like this channel, I can guarantee you that you're going to like what Michael has to say on his like 3 or 4 other different podcasts. Now, Michael knows way more than I do, so if you're going to subscribe here, make sure you check out his stuff. Go to the description of the video, and you'll find all the links there. And yeah, if you haven't already, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It also helps us out a ton. And now let's get into the video with Michael. So the last video we went through and we talked about your most drafted players. You've gone through and you found yourself in 8 fantasy baseball drafts already this season. You're saying you're planning on more. I don't know how many you're planning on, but that's not what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about some players that you found yourself not really even considering in any of these drafts. Maybe in one you're like, I guess they crossed my mind. But for the most part, just guys that you're like, maybe I never got the chance to draft them, or when you had that chance, you decided to pass it up. So I don't know any of these players. I'm going to be just along for the ride like we were with the last video. But let's hear it. Who's your first guy that you have not taken in a single league?
Nolan Arenado's one. I'm not interested in him this year. He's not at Coors Field anymore. That's a bummer. Not really feeling that. JT Real Muto's another. He's going way too high for my tastes at catcher. I just would never pay that price unless he could steal 20 bases a year. No way. I just don't believe that he's that much more of a value than a guy like Will Smith of the Dodgers. Other guys that I haven't drafted, and maybe I'll regret it. Randy Arozarena. I love him. I love it. I've said on one of the videos that we did a couple weeks ago that I love Randy Arozarena, but after his playoff explosion, I can't do it. It's too high of a price now. It's still a little too risky. And some of the people that I really trust say that they love him this year. So somebody's going to be wrong on this. It's not that he's going to be a bad player or have a bad season. I just don't want to pay the price. He's going around, 54, 55, 56 ADP. That's very, very high for me. I'm not interested in that. Another guy I avoid, and this is more for Roto, is Trent Grisham of the Padres, outfielder. I don't want him in Roto. He's an OBP guy. He's got a great eye, good plate discipline. If you're playing in a points leagues or an OBP-based league, OPS, yeah, then probably stick with him. But otherwise, in Roto, we're batting average. He's going to hurt you in batting average, and I think that's enough for me to not take him where he's going right now.
All right, well, in this video, let's go through and dive into each one of these players a little bit more. And first guy I want to bring up is Randy on Tampa Bay. And I'll say that I'm looking right now at NFC, just the data on where he's being drafted, and it is all over the place. So, of course, this is data being pulled from 334 drafts so far. So, obviously, you're going to have a couple just completely crazy drafts out of that list. But still, if you are just looking at his min and max pick, he's gone as early as 24. So, at the very back half of the second round in a 12-team league, and as late as pick 100 overall. So I think some people are right there with you and going, I mean, this player is just not in consideration for me at 55. And then other people are just on a full-on hype train.
Yeah, gotta love that hype train, baby. I tell you, 100 would be great. I would definitely take him at 100. I'd take him at 80, but I'm not going to take him in the 50s. I will not do that. I will never take him at 24 either because the risk is too unknown. What we saw in a playoff run, which is one of the hardest places to hit. But remember, it wasn't like it was your regular playoffs with a screaming crowd and, it was COVID. It was a different playoffs, but he still performed in pressure-packed situations, which gives me some excitement about him. I love him as a player. I just wish he hadn't had that playoff run because then he would have been around like 150, 200 ADP this year, and I would have gobbled him up like nothing. I loved him coming into September, and then he ruined my life by having a great playoff run.
Man, that still boggles my mind. I have no idea how in fantasy baseball people are valuing something like that so much. I obviously know if you're playing fantasy football, like if someone goes out and in just say Tampa Bay Super Bowl run, you see someone like Leonard Fournette go and just have a great playoffs, then yeah, people in fantasy football that don't understand sample sizes, then we know the football season is an overall shorter sample size anyway, then yeah, I would see those players getting drastically moved up. But I mean, I can't see it with as small of a sample size of Tampa Bay's playoff year. And I understand that they went to the World Series. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's the playoffs. Why does it matter? I know a lot of people literally don't even put it in models and other sports with playoff runs.
Yeah, it's very case by case, depending on the analysts, how they view a season, and do they think the playoffs are something they should put into their projections because not everybody makes the playoffs. So is it fair? Uh, eh, I just don't really use playoffs too much when I'm doing my analysis. I take it into consideration, of course, that to not do that would be ludicrous and silly, and it'd be irrational to make that kind of judgment. But take it as it is. It's one little segment of the season. That's it. Just like anything else, just like a July, 3 weeks in July. Yes, there's more pressure supposedly, but it's the same game being played.
I know, and what I don't understand with these professional athletes, and a lot of people don't really get this with sports, is they think like the revenge game where pressure's on or crunch time, whatever it is, indicates the true talent level of a player. Well, that's really not predictive at all. If you look at a large sample, I mean, you're just right. 3 weeks in July, at least how I view it, would be 3 weeks in the playoffs. If you're talking about trying to project for the next season, it's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, if you want to throw it in a model and you go, let's throw in these extra 3 weeks. We have an extra 3 weeks of data points. That is fine. And I think that that's something you should do. But I don't think you should say, let's throw in these 3 weeks and let's amplify their impact by just say 4x because the pressure was on, all eyes were on him, and he was trying his very best. No, they're professional athletes. They're trying their best every time they step up to the plate. So, I mean, that's just something that always kind of triggers me a little bit.
Yeah, you're right to be triggered by that because it's not accurate. It's not representative. Like you said, it's not a fair representation. And the data says more and more playoff results don't equate into season long results. Cody Ross of the Giants, like 10 years ago, had a credible playoff run, but that was it. He didn't really shine the next year and give you an amazing return. Now, I know maybe he was a little older than Randy Arozarena is. Randy Arozarena was a prospect traded from the Cardinals to the Rays for Matthew Liberatore, a pitcher who was very highly touted himself. So this is a guy who has a pedigree. I get that. I'm not dismissing that. I know all the angles of this. I trust it, and I love him as a player. I really do. I'm just going to have to maybe eat my words. If I'm wrong on this and he has an incredible 2021, then I'll have to just say, you know what? I was wrong. I'll be the first to say, hey, I made a mistake, and I can't predict them all. They can't all be winners. It happens. So Randy Arozarena, if he returns value that is at least at his ADP or greater, I'll eat my words.
Awesome. Well, do you want to dive into any of the players a little bit more? We don't have to. So just 100% up to you. I can just end the video there if that's what you would like.
I want to give you a couple more names that I've been avoiding just real quick so people can take note. James Karinchak, supposed closer of Cleveland. It's not very clear at all. In fact, if you start to look at their bullpen, they got a lot of talent in there. Nick Wittgren, Emmanuel Clace is another up-and-comer, a very elite reliever. A guy named Phil Matone, he is really good. He's a little older, too. He's 27-ish, and he had great rate stats. He had a higher ERA last year, but if you look at his FIP, it was half of what his ERA was. So my point being is that James Karinchak, he's not the heir apparent necessarily. Everyone's trying to anoint him, but what we're hearing and what we're seeing and the talent that is involved in the Cleveland bullpen, slow down, slow your roll, and you can't be taking him where he's going, like around, pick 80, 90 at 100-ish. That's too hot. Please do not do that. One other guy I would like to mention as well is Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler plays for the Phillies. He signed a deal with them. It was a big deal 2 years ago coming in. This was his first full season last year. So. Zach Wheeler never gives you what you think you're going to get. His career ERA is always higher than you think it really is going to be. He's just not a guy that you can rely on. He can get some Ks. He can give you some Ks. I'll give you that. But in terms of your rate stats and even being healthy, it's always been a problem. He's just never delivered on a long enough stretch. He's had little tiny little frames of excitement over maybe a month, 6 weeks. Never delivers you a full season. So I would say, no, thank you. I'm not interested.